Hi everyone, delonewolf here, and welcome to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. Now, CCP just released a feature video for the June release, which is really cool, with incredible music. I absolutely loved it, and I think I already saw it 5 or 6 times. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure to go do that, because it's definitely a really cool video. And of course, next week we should get the release with Shadow of the Serpent. I'm personally pretty curious to see if that can hold my interest and if it can tell a cool story. But we are here for the market, of course, so let's jump in here. We will, as always, start with plex at around 40 seconds. And let's take a look at these. So plex are now selling for 947 million. They were selling for a bit less, 934, just 5 minutes ago when I was making my preparations. So I think someone came in with a pretty big buying spree and basically bought everything under 947 million. The buyers though have gone up as well to 913 million. So we are talking now a 34 million ISK margin here in the JITA station, and you can see here on the chart that after testing the bottom of 850 million twice, which I think was on a sale twice, we're now slowly going back up here for the plex prices. In fact, if you take a look at 947 million, it's almost here on the chart. One thing that I should say, one of the viewers did mention this, and maybe at some point I'll try to check that out as well, is that there are a lot of citadels, large citadels that have been set up to avoid the extra taxes in JITA that are still in range for JITA trades. And so from that point of view, right, the margin here is pretty big inside the JITA station itself, but it is possible that more and more of the plex market is actually migrating to these citadels that don't have such high taxes, and there you will see a much smaller margin. So this is maybe something that I will check out at some point, but I'm holding off on that. Why? Because I know, or I suspect, that there are some serious plans to try and set up an actual new JITA Excel station, but that the people that may want to do this are probably waiting for contracts to become a thing in citadels before they want to deploy their Excel citadel and actually try to create the player-made market hub, which personally I think will have a chance to work, but it will, well, it could become a very strong content creator as well. So yeah, if I noticed large margins, keep this in mind. It is specific to the JITA station itself, and there are citadels around the JITA system who with remote trading you can actually trade in JITA, and that have much smaller margins because their taxes are much lower. But yeah, plex is going up in price. That does seem to be the trend at the moment. Here is the multiple pilot training certificate. You can see that one is actually ahead a little bit. It's already at 950 million on the chart. Again, with the double bottom, you can see it a little bit here, trying to get close to 850 million. And so we are actually almost at a billion, 980 million for the sellers on the multiple pilot training certificate, and 920 million for the buyer. So that's definitely a pretty big margin right there. That's something you can do if you want to gamble it, right? Try to buy one at 925 and then try to sell it maybe at 975 or something like that. But keep in mind that the volumes of these are of course much lower than the volumes of plex, which are at like 3,000 to 4,000 plex every single day. And that is obviously also why the margin here in the multiple pilot training certificate is so different. But yeah, 980 million and like only about a dozen training certificates left before we actually reach a billion ISK. So we're on our way up. Let's see if it has enough momentum. Here is the body rescope next. That one went up as well. So up to 250 million, but already going back down towards a more normal price. 260 million though for the sellers, 212 million for the buyers, and you can see that it is a very small market, so it's definitely something that is not as closely tied to plex as the training certificate, probably just because it is its own little thing, its own little niche market, and individuals can easily sway this entire market, which is probably what happened on this increase in price here. But on the other hand, of course, it's very difficult to make money in something that has such low volumes. What could be really interesting is the skill extractors. You can see that it's trying to go up in price as well together with plex, so I do think that these two are very strongly correlated. You can also almost see the double bottom here trying to go towards 200 million, not quite getting there. But skill extractors currently selling for 224.3 million. The bars are at 210 million as well. So pretty much the same margin. Well, no, not as plex at the moment, but usually we saw a margin of maybe 12-13 million in plex, and that's what we're seeing here. So a widening of the gap definitely seems to be something that's happening, and yeah, a slow uptick as well towards 220 million, with the buyers well over that, the sellers well over that already. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see if indeed this has some momentum. What could be a deciding factor is actually the success of the Shadow of the Serpent event and their new scope event system, which might keep more players playing, which might keep more new players playing the game as well. They're also revamping the new player experience once again, so it's going to be interesting to see if CCP can actually manage to create some interest in the game throughout the summer, which is usually something that's pretty difficult to do. But if they succeed, then we might see all of these prices continue to go up strongly. Here is the skill injector market next. A little bit of lag on this, but quite a substantial increase in price here in a bit over a month. So a bottom of below 580 million. Now we're already heading back towards 630 million. Sellers are at 637 million and the buyers are at 606 million. And so again, the strong correlation between plex and skill extractors, which is pretty much direct because it's Aurum tied, does mean that skill injectors also have a bit of the same movement to them. One thing that could of course have caused a little increase here from, let's say, just below 600 million to 630 million is the notice that CCP gave that they are planning to stop with the daily activities, the recurring opportunities that yield you 10,000 skill points. That is of course something that could have increased the price right here all of a sudden, because a lot of people have started to calculate their 10,000 skill points a day as well on every account that they can get for very little effort. But apparently the daily opportunities did not yield the results that CCP wanted, and so they're going to discontinue that, which in my opinion is maybe a bit of a loss as well, because I did read that a lot of very new players enjoyed that aspect because they felt like they could catch up a little bit, like they had an active way of working on their skill set, trying to get into the specific ships that they want, specific skills that they want. So I feel it's a little bit of a loss, and one comment that rang very true to me is maybe CCP can try to keep the system up for maybe if you want to have it in a very limited scope, as long as someone is in the rookie channel, you can allow them to farm the 10,000 skill points, or maybe just keep it for anyone that has less than 5 million skill points, so they can't use that to put it into extractors or something like that. But yeah, make that available for very new players that are then incentivized to log into the game every day, and that of course feel like they can actually get ahead a little bit with those 10,000 skill points a day. So I thought that it was really good for new players. A lot of new players did say that they enjoyed it and that they felt like it was something that they could work on and that did help them stay in the game. And so in my opinion, it's a little bit of a loss rather than completely cutting it. I think a better idea would be to just limit it to maybe the first 5 million skill points, or as long as someone is in rookie chat or something like that. But yeah, at the moment it's looking like CCP is gonna scrap it. Keep in mind though, everything that we're seeing here when it comes to these events, when it comes to the recurring opportunities, you can see that it is made in such a way that it can easily be brought back, changed, expanded upon. And so I do think that the new development cycle from CCP gives them much more flexibility. So I don't think we should count it out entirely just yet. Maybe if enough people give the right feedback to CCP, they'll bring that back for new accounts or for new players. So yeah, that's it for the Plex related market. Let's move on to some minerals. That would be 945. and let's take a look at what's happening here. So interestingly enough, titanium bouncing off a little bit of the 5.8 ISK mark. Keep in mind though, 5.8 was a 6-month low, but it's still not too bad a price for titanium. Honestly, I consider 7 ISK to be a really good price, so everything above 6.5 I think is really great, but between 6 and 6.5 is a really decent price for titanium. Just below 6 ISK is still not bad, right? That still makes it worth it to actually mine some titanium here and there, and it looks like we're actually trying to get back to 6 ISK. In fact, the sellers are at 602 and the buyers are at 601, so complete closing of the gap here. And yeah, pretty interesting to see a little bit of a bounce back for titanium, and the buyers actually going back up towards 6 ISK as well. Could put some pressure on titanium to actually keep going back up. Next up here we've got the pyrite chart. We went to a 6-month low at a pretty drastic pace from 11 ISK to 9.2 ISK, and so now we're a little bit of a jump back, but keep in mind here the 20-day moving average is still on its way down, and I think it actually still has some momentum. The real threat I think is if we break 9 ISK. So let's take a look at supply demand here. The buyers are already below 9 ISK, 889. They definitely want to get pyrite pretty low here, and for the sellers, let's see here. Well, not that much within the last 24 hours. We do still have 41 million units coming in at 937, but then it's just a few orders, 928, 925 of much smaller volumes. So I think we're hesitating, and I think the fact that it's being defended around the 9.2 ISK mark gives pyrite a chance to actually call this a bottom and try to stay well above 9 ISK in the foreseeable future. If something drastic happens in supply though, who knows how low we can go then. Next up we've got not Megasite but Mexalon. That's holding surprisingly above 72 ISK in the 72-74 ISK range. This is actually quite surprising. The volumes I think are starting to normalize once again, but this is the one high-SiC mineral that is not at a low point but at a pretty high point, and 74 ISK for Mexalon is actually a really good price. So 73.5 for the sellers, 69.84 for the buyers. Demand here 1 to 4 million, so not that much. A new supply though, not that much either. 13 million here, 8.4 million here, but it's not 17 million here, so yeah, a bit more supply than demand, but surprisingly enough, Mexalon has already been able to maintain its price for more than a month, so good job here. Keep in mind, I do think at some point this party is going to stop, but at the moment, Mexalon still maintaining a high price, the winner of the high-SiC minerals at the moment. Next up here is Isogen, which is once again going down, so we did reach like what looked like a bottom of 88 ISK, breaking 90 ISK here for a little while. Then we went back up to 102 ISK, but we're already on our way back down towards the 90 ISK mark. So sellers are at 89.96, breaking 90 ISK. That's very bad news. And surprisingly enough, here we still see like almost a third of a front page, including 13 million units coming in Isogen, so oversupplied. It's definitely happening. 86 ISK for the sellers. This is quite surprising, right? You have something like Mexalon that is still very high in price and doesn't have that many new sell orders, and Isogen that is at heading for a 6-month low is just straight breaking 90 ISK, and still the supply is coming in here in pretty much the same number of sell orders as Mexalon. Yeah, heading for a 6-month low here. I think it has enough momentum to break that 90 ISK, so look out below. We could actually go quite a bit lower for Isogen. Next up we've got Noxium that is, well, just hesitating to break out here. Try to go above 480 ISK, but it's just not happening. So now we're already on our way back down. An average 460, something like that, seems to be the current normal for Noxium, which is historically a very low price, but new supply seems to already be drastically dragging everything down. A full front page of new Noxium coming in here, going as low as 445 for the sellers, 405 for the buyers. So yeah, Noxium under extreme pressure. That is still the name of the game. I think it's just supply from NOSIC, NOSIC, Wormhole Space and high-SiC that is just too high at the moment. And yeah, it's just the new range that we have to deal with here. Over the last 6 months, we haven't really broken out anywhere, and if you look at the 1 year chart, of course, you can still see that we come from a much higher price previously for Noxium. So historically this is extremely low, but I think it's just the ore changes have caused this, and we have to accept Noxium is at this low point and is here to stay unless CCP changes something. Next up, let's check out some Nausicaa minerals. Here is the Zydrine chart. It's under a bit of pressure, but it is still at 1200 ISK, still with some momentum. We could go lower. Let's see where the sellers are at. 1218, the buyers are at 1073 ISK, so there's a bit of a margin. There's probably a bit of oversupply happening here as well. This is strange, probably an error, a completely empty bar here for a day, unless that did happen and we went lower, but honestly I don't think so. I think this is just a bit of a glitch. But the supply, of course, is still pretty strong here. This is probably one person coming in with 1.5 million at several price ranges here, and then it's still coming above that. So yeah, Zydrine under pressure a little bit, but at least it's not completely falling off a cliff just yet. We'll have to see if this downtrend has momentum, if we can actually like break 1100, 1050, maybe even 1000 ISK. Whether or not that happens could be very important for the entire mineral market. Megasite is of course in a very similar picture here. Try to hold on to around 1500 ISK, but that's just not happening. Also under pressure at the moment, breaking 1400. Currently the sellers are at 1394, the buyers are at 1317, and supply wise this looks pretty decent. Half a front page including several orders of more than 1 million units is going to put some continued pressure on the price. Again, we'll have to see if this has some momentum or not. And then finally for the Morphite one, the big winner of the Citadel expansion right here, doubling in price, is now having to give back a lot of its gains, but throughout all of this, of course, if people manage to buy at the right time here, they're making a lot of money and still doing so at 13,000 ISK at the moment. The buyers though have gone down, well, 12,000 ISK. They're still hesitating. Keep in mind, just a few months ago, you could have just straight up bought Morphite for 10,000 ISK, no problem. So yeah, it's still doing all right. After such a sharp rise, you have to give back some ground. But it looks for now like Morphite wants to trade at more than 10,000 ISK, maybe 11, 12,000 on average. So we'll see when this actually settles down a little bit. Next up, let's take a look at the impact on some Tech 1 chips. 1735. Let's take a look at these. I added 2 Tech 1 chips on a suggestion. I actually thought it was a really good suggestion to not only have combat chips, but to also add a few mining Tech 1 mining chips like the Retriever here. So let's go over these here. Armageddon showing some stability, just around the 195 million mark. Personally, I like this kind of a chart for a Tech 1 chip because it makes things a bit more stable for newer players. If they want to work towards an Armageddon, they know it's almost 200 million ISK at the moment, and that's what will get you an Armageddon. If it's extremely volatile and they have to sometimes pay 220 to 30 million for an Armageddon, that's definitely not, and then sometimes less than that, less than 200 million. Such a wide spread I don't think is good for new players that actually prefer something that's a bit more stable for their entry ships. So yeah, Armageddon pretty stable here, availability pretty decent. I think several sell orders of 100 units, including one at 200 million, is going to help with the stability here. So that's looking pretty good. Here's the Caracal, also starting to settle below 12 million ISK. Availability here is pretty decent as well. 12.4 for the sellers, 10,700,000 ISK for the buyers. So looks like we're also stabilizing here. Pretty good news, I think. Next up here is a new one, of course, the Coveter. All right, actually stable at around 33 million. Now we're heading for a bit of a dip. On an increase in price. So what I think happened here is something that usually happens. the price increases because supply just isn't following up anymore. We went up to 36 million. People saw that as a great opportunity, thus bringing a lot of coveters to the market, and now we're actually crashing a little bit, breaking 32 million. Currently sellers are at 32 million, and buyers of course have left the market on oversupply here at the moment. Everything has basically been filled up above 30 million. So coveter under pressure a little bit, but this is a similar chart to any Tech 1 chart, decently stable, and when you do get a price spike, the industrial backbone of EVE Online responds very quickly, sometimes a bit too heavily, which in the case here of the coveter seems to have happened. We have just too much supply for the market and it's under pressure. We're breaking the average of around 33 million, I would say, for the coveter. Next up here we've got the Dominics, very similar, except a double top here is pretty unusual, right? So when we go up to 250 million, we usually do go back down to the medium on increased supply, but I think this increase in volumes here, someone came in and bought a few Dominics fleets, caused a double spike, and then the response here, we're back to 195. So I think it's looking pretty decent for stability. Availability is not too great, but Dominics are coming in just below 200 million, and the buyers are at 186 million. So the Dominics looking okay to start finally being a bit more stable. Next up here we've got the Drake. This may seem like it's volatility, but going from 53 million to 58 million is still less than 10%, so it is actually alright. Put an average of maybe 54 million, aim for that for a Drake, and then it's actually looking decently okay. Availability of the Drake is quite alright. There's plenty of them on the market at the moment. Next up here we've got the Mauler, slowly going up in price, but still 12 million or just below that for a cruiser seems to be the current price. A little bit of inflation, well actually deflation in the last few months, so maybe yeah, cruisers coming back a little bit more in the meta or something like that is possible. The one worrying thing is of course availability here. There are just no Maulers on the market. They're not selling either, right? So the volumes are pretty abysmal, but yeah, if someone just buys 20 Maulers, then you're empty of them and you're set to create a bit of an artificial price spike there. Of course, if that happens, I do think that industrialists will spot that, bring Maulers to the market in pretty short order, but this is a pretty unusual situation. We're out of Maulers in the JITA market at the moment. Maybe producers move to some Citadels or something like that, it's possible. But again, for the Citadel check, I actually think that what could be happening, or what could happen once contracts are released, is that people will try to put up 1XL, become trying to create the new trade hub for EVE Online that will then probably be supported by some major nullsec entities as well in case of Vortex and things like that. Next up here we get the Myrmidon. Ooh, that's quite some volatility here actually, spiking up to 64 to 66 million 3 times in a row, heading from 54 million, so this is 12 million. This is definitely some volatility here in the Myrmidon market. 3 spikes in very short order. Now we're working our way back down. In fact, we're already back at 61 million. 56 million for the buyers, which is here on the chart. Actually had to go back up a little bit on this one. So yeah, the Myrmidon showing some volatility, but at least it's decently available. And if you look at this, an entire full front page of new Myrmidons, the pressure is on, of course. The opportunity has been spotted, but seeing 3 opportunities in less than 2 months like that, 3 sell opportunities, quite some volatility, is pretty unusual. Of course, this major volume spike here is going to create a third one, so maybe we could have kept it at 2, but someone decided differently by purchasing an awful lot of Myrmidons. Next up here we get the Oracles, slowly trending up to 90 million ISK, so that does seem to be something that is here to stay, because it's pretty unusual to see something like that then get completely squashed down. So yeah, Oracles 90 million, availability not great here again, so this could easily be manipulated up once again, but I think we'll start to see some Oracles come in here, but people have been very hesitant, probably due to the low sell volumes. So this could actually start to trickle down just a little bit back towards 85 million, but the Oracles are at a bit of a high point in what seems to be a more sustained manner because of the slow increase here, and it's going to be interesting to see whether or not this gap is going to be plugged or if people find better stuff to make. Here's the Raven then, 195 million, again normal battleship price, and availability really pretty decent for a battleship, including 25 of them coming in here. That's going to help stabilize things, so I think the Raven is set to stay stable just below 200 million. Next up, the Retriever, another suggestion here. That's an interesting one again. Just like the Coveter, we do see the same pattern. Decently stable at around 29 million for quite a while. Then some volatility with opportunities to sell them above 30 million. But the industrial response seems to have been too big. And now we actually broke the average on the downtrend, heading for 27.5 million. So again, the buyers have left this market. The sellers are trying to compete, but there are just too many of them. So 28 million for Retrievers at the moment. Pretty low price historically. Good opportunity if you want to buy a few of these, maybe park them in Providence or something like that if you want in on some of that Nosek mining. But it was a good suggestion, definitely something to keep in mind as well, that there are Tech 1 mining barges, and at the moment both of these seem to have come off of high points just about a month ago, but the response has been a bit too overwhelming, too much supply, causing them to actually reach 6-month lows at the moment. Next up here we get a Stabber, average of 11 million. This pretty uneventful chart, which I actually like for Tech 1 ships, but the one worrying thing here again is the low availability of Stabbers on the market. So this could change drastically, but you can see the volumes here again are extremely low, so people are not making Stabbers, and despite that we are still in a stable situation. Why? Because people just aren't buying them. Next up here we've got the Tornado holding at 76 million, coming off of a spike but back on its average. So this is actually pretty good. I think what happened here is of course increase in price spotted by the industrialists, a lot of Tornadoes coming to the market, but at least in this case they didn't overshoot it like with the Retriever, which has clearly been overshot. No, they brought in enough Tornadoes to stabilize the price, but now we're back on our average, which is personally how I like to see it. A bit of a volume spike here, so we could go up a little bit, but availability still seems to be quite strong, so Tornado possibly also set for some more stability. The Typhoon next, 180 million, so definitely not that popular, but again decently uneventful chart, in fact, except for the 6-month low here. Again on an opportunity sell up of 190 million, that's been squashed very quickly. So 180, 185 for a Typhoon seems to be the normal price. Availability not that great, but of course for the least popular battleship, it's the least popular battleship, and the battleships are not in the meta at the moment. I honestly don't think you need that much availability for that to create a stable market. And finally we get the Vixor, also just like the Myrmidon, a little bit of volatility, going for 13 million at the moment. So it may be that yeah, people are flying some Vixors in PvP at the moment. Almost 13 million for the sellers, 12.1 for the buyers, having to increase their buy orders right here. So very interesting. Galente ships, winners of the moment, I would say, in the Tech 1 market. Alright, moving on to Tech 2, 2740. Let's take a look at this, but again, the Tech 2 market doesn't seem to be the place to do active trading anymore. So let's take a look at here the Basilisk, for instance, showing stability in the last 2 months. No sign of any real spikes. Availability is really pretty good, honestly, except you don't have any recent sell orders. But yeah, 205, 210 million. You do see a pretty decent spread here. The buyers are at 191 million, so pretty wide margin here, and it's pretty difficult to actually see spikes happening. Next up here we get Cerberus, very similar situation, still slowly going down to 200 million, but that's still not a place where you say, all right, it's time to buy. And unfortunately here then, as the price has decreased for the Cerberus, it's just the margin that has decreased up to 194 million, which I still think is too high to actually be actively purchasing these and hoping for a nice 10-20% increase in price all of a sudden. So these two ships show the increased stability in the Tech 2 market, I think, and so personally I don't like that. Next up here we've got the Claw Interceptor, coming down below 20 million. So again, also under pressure, very similar to the Cerberus chart. Availability, yeah, look at that, 23, 20. It's oversupplied a little bit, but will we see a buy opportunity? Buyers have gone down to 18 million almost, so it could be in the cards. But let's take a look at the 1-year chart here. Look at that, below 16 million. close to 16 million here again. It's pretty obvious that we're hovering still a little bit too high to historically have this trigger mean that you have this sell opportunity, and this is of course a chart that we want to see. This here again is not too bad. Definitely a very low point below 16 million, able to then sell them at 20 million, 22 million. That's a lovely little increase in price. This is trade worthy. This slow descent here, it happened here before, but it's at a much higher start. So I'm actually afraid that this is not good news for volatility in the Tech 2 market. The Guardian, of course, proving me wrong a little bit. The one winner of last week, still holding on at 200 million. So this is also something that is clearly changing. The increase in price takes about a month, and then here we're now staying at this high point for a much longer period of time. So sellers 200 million, buyers 190 million. Forced to buy order here is of course not very good, to have a sharp decline and maybe another ride up. So yeah, definitely I still think that volatility in the Tech 2 market has been killed off quite heavily by the increased taxes. Next up here we get the Hound chart, very similar to the Cerberus, stabilizing at 20 million, which again you want to be able to buy that at like 18, 17 million or something like that. The buyers are still at 19.2. So yeah, too early to make a move on this one. The Ishtar still holding at the high point above 210 million. So again, you do see some volatility here, just like with the Guardian, but it takes a bit more time. And now, unfortunately, we're plateauing here for almost 2 months, which is not what you want to see if you want to actively trade this, have sell opportunities, have buy opportunities. You need this to sharply go back down, sharply go back up. It's just not happening at the moment. Next up here, the Manticore, again stabilizing at 24 million, too high. Here is the Nemesis, stabilizing at 20 million, still too high, right? You can see where we come from. If you take a look at the 1-year chart here, you can see that we went way below 18 million as a great buy opportunity. Then here is the volatility that we like to see. Again, here the sharp drop off. Again, a bit of an opportunity from 18 to 22 million, but now it's just stabilizing too much. And it's going to be very hard, I think, to actually make these twitch trades in the Tech 2 market. Here is the Olneros, again, slow increase in price over 2 months. Now we're staying at 165. There's no sign that we're seeing these types of volatilities. Of course, one thing to keep in mind, this is probably related to the nullsec war. So a nullsec war with actual Tech 2 losses could be the trigger to look out for if you actually want to make some money in the Tech 2 market. So if I would have to give you guys a tactic that I might want to implement in the Tech 2 market myself, it is find the right buy opportunities at like some low points. Hound slowly going up. You don't have that many buy orders here. Well, 19 is still too high, honestly. So the claw maybe 18 million. Try to pick up some claws. Then wait for then you have to wait for a nullsec war, where you actually notice, all right, there's actually a big interceptor fleets that have been destroyed. That's going to have to be replaced. Those are then your opportunities to bring them to the market, which will probably cause this type of volatility, maybe even in an order of magnitude because of the increased taxes and things like that. But for the Twitch trading, looking for those bottoms and then hoping that maybe in like the next month there is a bit of trade, a bit of activity, stuff like that just doesn't seem to be in the cards anymore. So I think that the Tech 2 market will now strongly correlate with actual nullsec wars. So next up here we get the Purifier, again 24 million. This is not where you want to be to buy. This is probably not where you want to be anymore to sell either. You can also clearly see here is bottom, top, decreased, all of that just becoming more and more stable. Next up here we get the Raptor chart, again stable at 24 million. 24 million for a Raptor, probably not where you want to be. If you look at the 1-year chart here, 20 million trigger, 20 million trigger here, double trigger here, then the war happened, and now here just too stable. The war increased volumes, that's an opportunity, of course, something that could still come back in the Tech 2 market. Finally here the Scimitar tried to go up for a month, but now just in between there, staying at a point where you don't want to sell, you don't want to buy. And if it stays here in the foreseeable future, yeah, just doesn't look too good for active trading in the Tech 2 market at the moment. 3410, tech tree market. Let's take a look at some of that, because we did already notice that the Tengu went up a little bit in price. So did the Confessor, trying to go up to 45 million. Let's see if there's a market response, because we of course know from the previous weeks or so that the tech tree market has been greatly oversupplied, and unfortunately that is still the case. So the Confessor goes up in price a few million. Here is the response: 20, 60, 10, 48, 14. Great supply coming in, full front page, more than a full front page of orders in the last 24 hours. This is of course quickly going to put the pressure back on the Confessor. This may be, it's a bit of speculation, but I did say that I was also starting to buy some Confessors, and so maybe this is a little bit of an Eve Talk effect, but I actually think that there's a lot of investors that just healthily check this market and also buy on great opportunities. But yeah, I also bought Confessors at this point right here, and so I think close to 40 million is almost a no-brainer price for Confessors, that if you have a long horizon and you, at some point on a war, on a change, on something like that, you will probably be able to make a decent profit off of Confessors that you buy for 40 million. Next up here we've got the Hecate. So that one basically went up in price 1 or 2 weeks ago, is now staying below 45 million. And despite that, you can still see the supply here. Last 24 hours, full front page, 24, 27 here. Pretty crazy. Buyers below 40 million, creating a great opportunity. But yeah, it's probably not going to go below 40 million, but you can also see that we're not increasing in price, that we're still oversupplied. So there's probably some pressure to go back towards the 40 million. At that point, of course, people probably notice that opportunity, buy on increased volumes, increase the price a bit. But just the increase of 4 or 5 million is enough to bring huge supply to the market here. Next up we've got the Jackdaw then, and a little bit of lag in the trade window, but the Jackdaw, interesting, below 40 million, already working its way back up, so lagging behind a bit. But yeah, just no demand, sellers are forced towards 40 million. If I would have money to spend, maybe I do a little bit. I'm not going to give all my cards away, but then yeah, I would probably just buy a couple Jackdaws close to 40 million. I think that one will probably go up towards 45 in the upcoming weeks, but then again gets squashed by supply. So you can see here that at these prices supply goes down a little bit. Of course, 86 Jackdaws still coming in at 40.5 million is a bit of overkill, but it's not as many people still selling Jackdaws at these prices, so there is an opportunity for this to go up just a little bit, but you can still see that the potential is there to plug those gaps, to take advantage of any increase in price. So despite these extremely low prices, still almost half a front page coming in, including more than 100 into sell orders, is keeping the pressure very much alive on the Jackdaw. Personally, I think I will make a quick trip to Jeddah, maybe spend $500 million on some Jackdaws here, just to have them and wait for a good opportunity to sell them at a better price. Finally, this Vapul for the tactical destroyers, below 45 million as well, increased volume here. Let's see what the response is. Unfortunately for well, maybe a Vapul fleet for actual use makes sense. If you do this on speculation, then very bad idea, because just look at the supply, full front page, 58, 48, 37, 21, 16, 11, just too many Vapuls, because we can sell above 45 million. So this will spike up to 45, but will be squashed very quickly by the increased supply. Because people will notice this opportunity right away. So yeah, tactical destroyers definitely still oversupplied. It's currently trading in the 40 to 45 million range. I think anytime you can pick them up close to 40 million, you're actually making a pretty damn good deal. But if you're looking for making money on that, you may have to wait for a very long time. Next up, let's take a look at some of these cruisers. Here is the Legion, interestingly enough, going up to 170 million on some data points. So 175 for the sellers, 144 for the buyers. It just doesn't show that yet, but I do suspect that it must have had something to do with big purchases. So I think the volumes will speak for themselves by next week or something like that. But yeah, interestingly enough, Legion, a lot of pretty sharp increase in price, but the Something you should notice is of course the response. Last 24 hours, full front page, including 39, 18, 13. I actually think that this will drop down very quickly. Next up here, we've got the Loki, still at 135 million despite increased volumes. Availability is definitely dropping, so I actually do think now that production will move from a lot of stuff to the Legion to squash that, which may give a bit more breathing room to the Loki. That's at 135, pretty damn low. So it happened, the Legion did increase in price pretty sharply and at a decent clip, but so far it's the only one, and so that's of course bad news for managing to maintain higher prices. Here's the Proteus then, tried to go up to 150 but is already being stopped. Keep in mind as well, we come from below 140 million, definitely a 6-month low here, so I think this is just a normal market response. Availability, half a front page of new ones, not in such big numbers, which you can already see in the Legion of course, twice, 3 times more in a single cell orders, definitely in the cards. So yeah, Proteus went up to 150 but is already stalling, and then the Tengu went up a little bit as well, but above 150 and is already hesitating. So is the supply coming here? Yeah, obviously here. I would say almost 2 front pages of Tengus coming in here, including 40, and then people starting to compete with each other to still sell Tengus above 151 million. So the Legion is maybe a quick opportunity to sell if you want to try it, but I think it's a very small window because people are just producing too much Tech 3 stuff at the moment, and the entire market is under pressure. The only one that tries to claw its way out of this is the Legion, but I think that there's plenty of room for producers to actually switch to the Legion to plug this gap, and it will be plugged very quickly, I think. And then for the extra material, 4120, we're gonna check on the boosters. We pretty much have to do that with the legalization of drugs in EVE Online coming in the June release. This could have a bit of an impact, so let's take a look at these. Now, I don't know a lot about the booster market, and so it's a lot more than I thought, so we'll quickly go over the charts, see if we notice anything. Now, Anti-Pharmacon Aeolis, I think this is like one of those drifter boosters, so it's obviously a new one, and is currently still in the stabilization phase of its use. So it's basically new boosters that have been introduced not that long ago. We probably won't notice anything major here except that they've been introduced and that they're now slowly going back down in price as the production lines have been set up throughout the game. So all of this obviously is not going to show any real signs on the booster legalization. What could show some signs is, for instance, here, improved blue pill booster. Obviously it does right here. Definitely a sharp uptick from 9 to 11 million. So I think that people expect more use out of boosters, maybe even have that become a part of fleet doctrines. And so some of the better boosters are bound to increase in price like this on the news that in the June release they'll be legalized. Here's the crash booster. Doesn't seem to be that popular because that's still just holding at 8 million. The drop booster though, look at that, pretty sharp increase to 13 million. Maybe a bit too early. Is this someone that may have leaked something? That is possible, and is now settling at 10 million still. Definitely about a quarter higher than what it was before this uptick here. Exile booster going down in price, so it doesn't look like that one. We can't really tell much from this type of a chart, so I'm just gonna skip that. Here's the Mind Flood booster going down in price. It's surprising, some of them are actually heading for 6-month lows, but there are a few clear winners here. Soothsayer booster, don't ask me what they do, but improved X Instinct booster does seem to be one of those winners, going back to 10 million. Its trade started 6 months ago, but it was trading for 5 million just a couple of weeks ago, so doubling in price on the improved X Instinct booster because of course a CCP change, which I think I'm just going to go over this. The really important thing here is that anything CCP does change has a major impact on the economy, or can have a major impact on the economy. Wave 0 here, that's probably something that was already legal. Blue pill up a little bit, not too much. But yeah, it does. This is why I want to show this to you guys. Look at the increased volume here, still managing to hold the price, but going from 1.5 to 2 million on a single day basically is definitely a pretty sharp increase in price. So standard drop booster, again the volumes, man, the volumes are pretty crazy. And having this volume here is pretty weird, but again the standard exile booster, obviously one of the winners as well, going from 3.5 to almost 5.5 million at its high point. Frantics booster, Mind Flood, nope, some of these not doing that great. I suspect that maybe capital, super capital related boosters are not really moving because, well, they're only usable in Nosec anyway, so this doesn't change them. But very useful boosters for sub-cap ships will probably be the winners of this change. Strong Blue Pill, obviously one of them here, going from 20 million up to 35 million at its high point, settling at 25 million, again about a 20% increase in price here. Crash Booster, not one of the winners, so we'll just quickly go over these, see if we can spot some more winners here. Strong Exile Booster, honestly that looks like it's on speculation more than anything else. Strong Frantics Booster, obviously now starting here 12 million on average, trading currently at 30 million. That's obviously a change, but keep in mind these volumes are pretty drastic as well. Modified Mind Flood, nope, probably a Nosec related one. That's not a good chart, So a lot of these just don't have the volumes to create a good chart. That may change as well, of course, on this change. But there's a lot more boosters than I thought in the game already. And looking for winners, ooh, man, Frantics Booster definitely going down in price. Mind Flood going up a little bit. So yeah, there's just a couple of these, like the Blue Pill, that are clear winners. I think they'll definitely see more use being legal in high sec, but overall the effect is just restricted to some boosters when it comes to that change. So thank you very much for watching, guys. That's gonna be it for this EVE Talk, and as always I will see you all next time.